Crazy. Glad you made it back.
Just let me know when we're ready.
It was a good trip.
Sounds like fun.
No. There's my.
Okay, we're live.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, let's get going. Thank you everyone for coming to this workshop to discuss priorities for the remainder of the fiscal year. And I think if it's all right with everyone, we'll just hand this over to David to sort of work through this matrix that he created for us to, muddle through, I guess.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, and thanks for coming in on a special night. Just to, I guess when I first started talking about this, was feeling a little bit like the priorities of what I thought the board wanted might have been different than what the board wanted. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, well, maybe we all want to get pulling on the rope, we get on the same page, make sure that we're spending time in the right direction and on the right things. So put together these, it's actually kind of like 3 lists to kind of help focus our efforts internally, but also help get some direction from the 5 of you. First thing I'll say, or second thing I'll have to say, since I already started talking, was that this certainly, the whole thing isn't an all-encompassing list. It doesn't encompass everything we do internally. It's more like things that aren't already on autopilot, so to speak, the car registrations and that type of thing, they just happen, dog licenses and whatever else that happen, which really takes up the bulk of our time. And then there's these 4, 5, 6 pages of items that fill in other time, I guess is the best way to put it. Broken down into 3 major categories. Non-discretionary is the first, which we really don't have a choice. Well, we could choose to ignore the law or the Constitution or whatever else you all took an oath to uphold, but that wouldn't be my recommendation. The second part of the list is things that were funded at town meeting, which mostly the board or the previous board put forward as things that they thought were necessary and appropriate for the town, or things that we really need to make sure we do. And the third is discretionary and non-funded, things that have arisen during this year or previous years that either didn't need funds, haven't been funded yet, would be nice to do, we ought to do, but we haven't got to, those type of things. So if you entertain me for a couple of moments, I'll ramble on, and then we certainly jump in if there's something that doesn't make any sense to you, but we'll start in the front page with non-discretionary items. These are in no, all of these sheets, they're in no particular order once they get into that section. It's just kind of a running list that we have. I will say that it's a little bit color-coded, with the green parts being short-term or near-term items. The yellow, I'd call them kind of intermediate term, just a couple months out mostly. And then the things that aren't highlighted are just out there, don't forget them. At some point we'll transition to yellow and then transition to green. There's no magic to all that. And I can I'll give you a little bit of a status on each one, but probably we don't want to get sidetracked with some of the minutia, unless you really want to, because if we get sidetracked in minutia on 20 or 30 different items, we're going to be here 3 or 4 days. So anyhow, so for non-discretionary items, again, these are things that are required of us either by state statute, town charter, ordinances, or things that just we don't have any discretion but have to do. beyond our normal things. Property tax stabilization, we've been talking about those applications for a period of time now. We received 292 by the deadline. We're still waiting to see if any additional come in by mail that are postmarked prior to December 1st. We're to notify the applicants as to their eligibility for the program. We're in the process, we've got a spreadsheet filled out now with names and addresses and whether or not you're homestead and whether or not you check boxes 1 through 5 on eligibility and what you checked in section 3 and whether you turned it in on time. So that's pretty well done or filled out. Now it's going to be a period of time to actually review each of those. A couple of things since this went out at the end of last week or Saturday to you today, we received a request for survey of information from Maine Revenue Services and the Maine Municipal Association. Maine Revenue Services is the state agency that's overseeing this program and will do an audit of it. They want their information by December 14th.
Oh, great.
Next Wednesday.
Good God.
You know,
Perfect.
and it's not, they're not asking for an overwhelming amount of material, but one of the things they asked for isn't on our spreadsheet, of course, because, you know, we didn't think we needed it. They're asking for the assessed value of the properties. So now we gotta go find, well, first we have to figure out who's eligible, which isn't too far away. And then we're gonna have to add another column to the spreadsheet for assessed values and then go through 290 some odd applications and say, oh, so-and-so's, you know, property at whatever Beach Road is now assessed at $235,000. And then we have to sum all those up and tell them what the assessed value of that property is. I'm sure they're trying to get a handle on what the possible financial ramifications of that law is and how many people actually apply.
Mhm.
So we'll feed the machine, so to speak. And MMA has asked for some additional information, as we talked a little bit. I think they take the information earlier, but they said they were going to accept it through the middle of January. So we'll hit those. 30 to 45 day notices are our statutory requirements for foreclosure notices for non-payment of taxes. Those will go out middle of next week, December 14th. That is for taxes that were committed in 2019. Just for anybody that doesn't know, you get a period of time to pay your taxes, and then we send out a lien notice that says we're going to file a lien. If you don't pay by a certain date, it's usually somewhere in the July so your taxes were due in October and April. That's following July. If you haven't paid, we send you a notice saying you're going to file a lien. And then 18 months after that, the window opens when we can send out these 30 to 45 day notices that says if you don't pay by whatever the day is in January, automatic foreclosure takes place. Those notices, obviously, that's pretty heavy-handed government by being able to take somebody's property for non-payment of taxes. So not only do they go to property owners, but if you have a mortgage holder, it goes to the mortgage holder or any other lien holders or anybody that's got a claim against your property because they may lose their interest as well. So there's a fair amount of research that goes into the back end of that with the registry, but we haven't foreclosed on a property in a number of years because we've been pretty diligent about hoping people to get. And once we send out the notices, a couple weeks prior to actual foreclosure, we'll do just about anything to make sure people are aware and help them out. Anyway, again. 2020 fiscal year 24 budget is coming up. We'll be sending the requests out to committee chairs and department heads and whoever else this month. First draft will come to you in early February. So we're going to have a big push in January, in basically January, to get that all squared around. So at some point, you're all going to get, if there's something you'd like to see on the fiscal year 24 budget, you'll get a little kind of, anything, where we headed. Harbor fees are set by the board at your next meeting. It's on the next board agenda. That's established by the harbor ordinance that in December you're supposed to do that. And we send out notices following to the users following the ordinance by the second Friday in January. So you can see those dates are on there. It's coming. There's an appeal with the Board of Appeals going to be held next Monday night, which is, this is probably a good example of something that was just completely out of the blue. Sand Zones obtained a building permit, actually back in May, and then in October, their neighbor, Overlux, filed an appeal of that building permit application. So we're, that triggers another thing within our land use ordinance. There's a certain period of time within which, after the appeal's been filed, that we have to hold a meeting. And it's those things that they jump to the top of the list, so to speak, and everything else just kind of goes, okay. Because you have to coordinate with the Board of Appeals members and town attorneys and the attorneys for the property owner and the attorneys for the people that are filing and whatever else. But that meeting is scheduled to occur next Monday at the fire station. And then we have the local election, which will be for next June. At your next meeting, you're going to get a draft of your budget and election schedule that will have various dates backing up from, I presume, the second Tuesday in June will be the likely date of the election for selectmen, school committee, budget committee. We traditionally do it on the second Tuesday in June because that's when the state, if they're going to have a June election, that's when they do it. So we're not having two elections and tracking in two different ways. And the dates will back up from that. So all those things you see down underneath, when nomination papers will be available, referendums, when the papers will be back, all of those dates, just say to be determined, really will hinge on the last one that says election day to be determined. You figure that date out, and we back everything back by the statutory period to fill in those dates and ordering ballots and stuff like that. And the last non-discretionary item that wasn't on the draft of this that went out on Saturday is the implementation of LD 2003, or Public Law Chapter 272, which is the affordable housing, where the legislature said, we know better than you do locally. We want you to implement these changes to your land use ordinances and whatever else, so that properties that we might have said could only support one dwelling unit can now support two. If it's on public water and public sewer, it can now have four. Somebody at some point is going to have to take the land use ordinance and dovetail the two of those together, so that if we need to make changes, which I'm sure we will, those can occur, and a lot of those provisions go into effect July 1, so really we're looking at voting in June for those dates. Having said that, I see Mike thinking about, he's probably heard about legislative policy committees.
There stuff, yeah.
There's all sorts of potential legislative action that may occur in the new session. And the Department of Economic and Community Development is supposed to come out with the rules, which they haven't done. So it's hard to implement things. The law's semi-clear, but the rulemaking really adds to the challenge of that. So getting all that back to us so we can figure out what needs to be changed, so we can figure out how we present that to the voters is looming out there.
I got a question.
Yeah, fire away.
Assuming all of that other stuff doesn't happen or nothing happens, on our end, who is going to do whatever changes might have to be made? Today we don't have a land use committee.
Mm-hmm.
Who does it default to? To the planning board, to the board of selectmen, to the town administrator?
Everything defaults to the Board of Selectmen,
Yeah.
and then you get to decide. Yeah, I've had conversation with the town attorney about this. I've had conversation with a person that used to do planning in the region that's now then went to do some consulting and is now working for Maine State Housing or Maine Housing Authority, one or the other, about would be interested in possibly taking on a role. The code officers looked at it a little bit. I haven't even formulated how best to go about it. On your next meeting, you're gonna have fine folks from MCOG here that might be having somebody in their organization doing some housing stuff that might be, there's a lot of might be's. So, but it's gonna default back to you, which means it's gonna default back to me too. 6 of us are gonna have to. I don't know the answer to a lot of these questions, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
So, David,
Yeah.
in the 6-ish months that we have to execute this non-negotiable list, how much time will it take? Looking into your crystal ball, but knowing that a lot of these things are things that we do annually. But I guess I'm just trying to quantify what percentage of your time and the staff time all this takes.
Yeah.
If you can.
The vast majority, I guess, of what I do is prepping your packet, cleaning up from your packet, getting ready for a future packet.
Mm-hmm.
And then stomping on, brush fires that come into the front door when somebody wants to talk about something that's just out of the blue.
And so that's included in the asterisk of the
Yeah.
day-to-day kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So not on this list.
You're looking, my time-wise, the property tax stabilization stuff is probably a day's worth of time.
Mm-hmm.
If you could dedicate a day to it, which you can't, unfortunately. We will. 30 to 45 day notices primarily done by others in the office, and I get to, give a review too. That's probably in the half-day range. The budget will be crazy all to the wall. Getting the requests out aren't challenging because staff does, at least as far as I'm concerned, it's not challenging because staff does most of that.
Mm-hmm.
But then when that comes back and trying to fill in the blanks and get people to actually respond to the request, without having to say, hey, you're getting 0.
Right.
No. Pretty much all free time in January gets sucked up in budget, to be honest. Harbor fees, once the board establishes those, it'll take about an hour of my time. That's not a lot because Melissa does all the hard work
Mm-hmm.
in getting those out. The overlock appeal is probably, all told, is probably another day's worth of time
Mhm.
at this point. Because it's all organized. It's just going to be a matter of making sure they get in the building, and the building set up, and then coordinating when they have to come back to meet again to prove their findings. So that's probably not too bad. The budget and election schedule is an hour or two. The rest of that stuff with ballots is days
Days be,
spread out over that coming time. And then the implementation of that, who knows? It's so nebulous at the moment. It's hard to assign that.
but not insignificant,
No.
not minutes.
No. No, because, I mean, even if we are fortunate enough to bring somebody on board to assist, they need to know,
Yeah.
get a copy of the land use ordinance in an editable format, and then what does this mean? And then coordinate with Frank, and then get whatever they come up with it to Sally, who then,
Checking in with us probably.
this really doesn't meet with what the law says or does,
Yep.
and back to you, and make sure that it's all, no, it's not insignificant, but it's hard, without knowing how we're gonna do it, it's very hard to quantify.
And David, the deadline for that is before July 1st.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's ordinance, town meeting type.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking,
Tomorrow stuff.
if we're talking a vote on the land use ordinance, if, depending on whether or not we do it via referendum ballot or open town meeting vote, is gonna really dictate, because if you do, anything you do via referendum, you have to have the ballots ready 30 days in advance.
And we're talking weeks to have that done, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're talking, you have to have the printer 30 days in advance, you have to have a public hearing somewhere in there.
Right.
Now, that can occur after if you have a public hearing, or when you have a public hearing, ideally you have it before it goes to the printer in case you want to change something, or before it goes to the ballot, because once you've finalized the language, somebody could stand up and say, well, that's whatever, and you might agree with them and want to change it, but catch you next time. Really, if it were a perfect world, something to be voted on in June is done by January.
Yeah.
Something to be voted on by November is done in June. I mean, for all intents and purposes, done, because of the necessary steps to do all these little things along the way to get legal review and warrants reviewed and prepared and ballots and whatever else.
Yeah.
It's, time just disappears.
Sure, yeah.
And so David, to back up a little bit, you said that, largely coordinating and correlating all of the agenda items that come in, then putting together the information for the packet, getting the packet, distributing the packet takes a significant portion of your week.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be able to venture like what percentage of your week that takes?
I bet it takes half the week
50%.
to clean, what I would refer to as clean up after the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
So you make decisions and they have to be distributed to whoever. And then between that and gearing up for the next one, and coordinating people to come in or get their stuff in, you get, everybody knows, but lately as chair gets the draft agenda, on the Tuesday before. So tomorrow, for next week's meeting, she's gonna get a draft agenda to review, and then she tells me.
There'll be some back and forth.
Yeah, and then by the end of the day, Wednesday, usually that's pretty well refined, and then Thursday and Friday is gonna be just as best I can, nothing but feeding that to Karen to make the photocopies, to get it in a paper packet, and then writing a newsletter and scanning it and emailing it out and posting it online and whatever else.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just, yeah, and a lot of this stuff, not a lot of this stuff, some of this stuff is, well, I guess none of this stuff is, almost none of it is packet related, but some of it is, this election schedule that you're gonna see. But the rest of this is just happens kind of behind the scenes, because it's stuff.
Mhm.
But really, and I don't want this, don't think this is all about me or me whining or whatever else. It's really trying to just get us again on the same page, because there are, each one of you has your 1 to 5 priorities probably, and your 1 to 5 maybe Selectman Garrettson's 6 through 11, and how those all fall out and what gets done. And I get this, and certainly we have committees and citizens that all have their number one priority, and they're, in a nice way, their feelings can get hurt when their number one priority is only number one with me until I hang up the phone, and then I go back to the other stuff that needs to get done. So it's neither here nor there. So does this kind of make a little bit of sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Those are the easy ones. We're gonna do it no matter what. The funded list is couple pages long. Some of these are long time on the list and just never have really risen to the top. And I'm gonna say when there's a lull between putting together the selectmen's packet and taking care of, employee concerns or citizen concerns at the door, my first inkling is to go to this list and say, is there any of these things that need to be worked on? And it's not like we work on one and then we stop and we work on another. It's like we do a little bit on this, and then I give direction to finance director to go do that, and she goes to that, and the public facilities director to go do this, and he goes off and does that. But when there's nothing for me to do on any of these lists, then my focus goes towards the funded things. Not solely, as you'll see when we get to the unfunded or discretionary items, and then start knocking things off. And again, there's no hierarchy to any of these things on these lists, with the exception of how I perceive some of the hierarchy or timelines, again, are in green and yellow. Just run down these quickly. Landscape bid, we do this annually, where we have mowing and leaf cleanup and whatever else here at fire stations, the harbor, and the parks. We'll look to try to get that out the door to bid by some point in February, so that we have somebody on board when spring actually arrives. Our winter road maintenance bid, this is the last season of a contract. With our current contractor, we'll want to get that out to bid so that we can get somebody on board for another 3 or 5 years down the road. Certainly my efforts in those 2 items and some of the others we'll talk about will be somewhat diminished this year, because we have a public facilities director, except he's never done either of these. So over time, his effort's gonna go up and my effort should go down. We'll see how that all over time works out. The FEMA and MEMA storm damage stuff, that's ongoing. I actually just received an email right around election time where they've requested some additional information, and it's just not done, but it's gonna be. Revaluation, we obviously have a contract for that. Doesn't really, I don't see anything on our horizon where that's gonna be a bigger issue until we start to do inspections, and then people are gonna be concerned. Who's this person? Why are they coming to my house? You know, they'll have name tags or badges, but you know, somebody stranger comes, knocks on your door and says, "Hi, I'm working for the town. I want to, you know, measure your house, and yeah, I'm here to help." Yeah, okay. Paving bid. A lot of these things when we talk about bids, landscape and winter road maintenance, paving, there'll be some others as we go down through here. We'd like to. It's going to be a little bit more of a quieter time on the construction end for the public facilities director. So we're trying to ladder out his work so that we can hit all these milestones and get these all out the door and get the pricing back. So he has something to watch being constructed in the spring. I think we had pretty good success this past year with switching our paving program to be spring oriented versus fall. We didn't end up against the crunch of weather, and seemed to work out. We got the contractors here, and we got them in, we got them out, and moved on. Our townhouse road culvert replacement. That's a big culvert. We have our environmental permits in hand. We got the grant application submitted in early November. We're in hopes that we get some word here at some point about when those projects will be funded. Again, we're hoping to bid that out in late winter for project award, hopefully in March, and contract signing, so that the contractor can order materials and be ready to go when our in-stream work window opens up on July 15th. And then we've got, it's in here, the in-stream work window, July 15th to September 30th. Our goal would be to get the project maybe not done, but the road reopened before the school buses roll. So that, because there is a school bus that goes across Townhouse Road, and it's a bit of a circuitous route if they can't go that way. So that's kind of where we are. Our technology upgrade with our email addresses for all of you is just pending access instruction, and our server and all that other stuff is done, and the as I understand it, the emails are done and ready. It's just making a little instruction to have access and whatever, simple and easy for you all to read, and getting Jim's attention to finish that out. Our fire department security camera, and the contract has been awarded, and I believe we're on a schedule for maybe next week, but don't hold me to that. So that'll be in and done. EMA director, as you know, we don't have one. I'm getting ready to advertise that, and was contemplating actually putting a copy of the ad in with our firefighters' payroll checks that they're going to get here in a week or two.
There you go.
Good.
Thinking maybe we'd have somebody jump forward, but we might not too, but be worth making 25 photocopies and stuffing them in the envelopes.
Absolutely.
A harbor webcam, that's been on the list for a long period of time. We have done the electrical system upgrade at the pier, which has provided power to where we think we're going to have the camera. We need to recontact LCI about getting some internet service there, and then recontact the vendors that we talked to before that said, well, we need power up there and we need internet service out here.
Mhm.
So it's coming. The harbor has a whole list that continues on to the next page, with the only thing that we've highlighted thus far is the hoist. We have 2 down there, one of which we took out of service. One went out of service, had a malfunction. While that was getting repaired, we were using the backup one, and when the other one got back online, we took the backup offline because that is just, it either needs to be replaced or reworked due to 20 years rust. And one of the things that I want David to do, which he hasn't had the assignment as yet, the other David, is to review the standards for hoists to make sure that we're actually following what we're supposed to be following, and that we don't go and reconstruct something, replacing it in kind, and find out that it needed to have, you know, an additional safety switch, or because standards change over time, and we don't want to make the mistake of just replacing something thinking it's fine, and then have somebody come down and say, oh, where's your annual inspection?
Mhm.
Where's your whatever?
Do it have, I mean, should I say the name? Like, is that, are they a body that oversees?
We're subject to Department of Labor, state of Maine Department of Labor standards versus the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, is that what it stands for? Because we're a municipality, and Maine has opted to have the the Department of Labor adopts almost the same standards. Some of them exactly OSHA standards, and some they're a little bit different, but not much. But we need to make sure that what we have complies with the standards, for sure. Penobscot Park.
Oh, hang on, David,
yeah.
sorry. Should, in the foggy recesses of my mind, I know that the Harbor Committee had made some recommendations for ordinance changes.
Yes, that's on the.
Did I miss that?
You did.
Okay,
I
good.
think it is somewhere. Well, if we don't find it, we'll come back to it, but it's here. It's here somewhere. I know it is.
Have we gotten to it yet?
No, we have not.
Okay.
Maybe not, all right, sorry.
Maybe it was on the. We're gonna find it. If we don't find it, I'm gonna make a note about harbor ordinance changes.
Okay, anyway, sorry, didn't mean to derail you.
No, well, you did, but
I know we talked about it,
we've talked about it several times. It's here somewhere, but if it's not, it is now. Derailed me.
okay, Penobscot Park.
Oh, Penobscot Park. The last of the items that we don't have done that the board asked that we do down there is the re-roofing. And the ground has cursed us. It is really soft down there now. Before we could get the people in to do it, fall rain showed up. So we're now waiting for hopefully frozen ground so we can traverse down to the structures with a pickup truck and get it done. So, but we have somebody lined up to do it, and it's just a matter of, unless we want to, you wouldn't even want to walk carrying a bundle of shingles down there right now. It's just,
The whole hillside's draining right down
it's
there,
just,
huh?
it's just a soupy mess. I mean, not mess, but
Mhm.
it was a good choice to close the gate, put it that way, before the rain started. So, and I don't know if he came last week or he's coming this week. While we're talking about that, got a note from Coastal Mountains that they're gonna do their annual inspection that they do of all the properties they have conservation easements on. So, sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Park at the gate and walk your way around, wear your boots. Ball field drainage, that's another one that's been on the list for a long period of time. Over here at the ball fields, about trying to keep water from getting from the upper field onto the lower field by putting a drain in between. Just hasn't risen to the top. Road improvement, we've got money in the budget for Calderwood Road for surveying and engineering. Haven't moved a muscle on that. And the next one down has been what David came and made a presentation to you the last meeting about road surface management. And he's still plugging away at that. Hopefully he'll be done with that in January. Tennis court, maybe I'll close that door. Tennis court resurfacing. This is what we've been talking about the last couple of meetings, putting together the warrant. After you do your work with it, it will go to the budget committee for their recommendations, and then we'll probably have a town meeting some point in January with the idea of constructing it as early in 2023 as possible, both with our vendor and with the weather. Main Street sidewalk, Breeze made of the library. The board had asked Selectman Ray quite a while ago, before he broke his leg, to hold a stakeholder meeting. We were supposed to prepare a plan for him to do that, which we haven't done. But hopefully we can get onto that and get that done. Bandstand roof replacement was something that was once again approved in the budget. Looking to try to get that out to bid this winter so that we can construct it at some point next year. And same with the parking upgrade at Breezemere. What am I forgetting? What is it? What do you got? You got that look on your face.
No, I'm gonna keep beating that dead horse. So, you know, knowing that some of these things have been in the queue for years. Gut instinct, time to get these things done. I mean, if you said holistically,
yes, if you said beyond the discretionary items, don't work on anything else but these funded items, you know, anybody coming in the door, we'd be hard pressed to get it done before the end of construction season in 2023.
So a year would be,
well, I mean, yeah, I mean,
a miracle.
Well, not necessarily the things on the list, but let's look, you know, I'm just going to pick an example. Townhouse Road culvert. We're going to get that out the door, out to bid. We have a 2-year window with our environmental permits to get that project done. So we're either going to do it in the summer of 2023 or the summer of 2024. We've already, in the last 2 years, we've quote unquote lost that road at least 3 times.
Yeah.
Because the thing doesn't work. Does not have the capacity to move the water. And every time that road washes out, the road ends up in the brook down. You know, it's like we need to get this done and make that, you know, put a check mark beside that. So the things highlighted in green and yellow are going to get done, but those are going to lead to new things under that same item in green and yellow until a year from now, or, you know, reval will be 2 years from now, 2.5 years from now. I guess I would say if there were things here and on the next list that were of higher priority to the five of you, that would be good to know, so that if, particularly of the things that aren't in green or yellow, because they get moved up the list faster.
Yeah. And I guess my question is in no way like a judgment of how you or the staff spend their time at all, but I'm looking at multiple years of our voters giving us our marching orders, filling two pages plus.
Yeah.
What would it be fair to say is a full week just in the non-discretionary items? You know, so we're looking at page 1 being an average work week with multiple years of
Yeah, I mean,
not insignificant projects to,
Right.
to
I mean,
plan for, fund, and execute.
yeah, I mean, if you even look at the relatively insignificant projects, they're all important.
Yeah.
But I'm looking down at like the harbor and see the ladder.
Yep.
I've never in my life spent more time trying to place a ladder than we have on that ladder.
Yeah.
Getting it constructed. And then I want it over here. Can't go over here. Or I move it over here. Then somebody else gets upset. And then move it over here and somebody else gets upset.
And the harbor committee has to have multiple
And
meetings to
we-
change their mind about it, which then you're attending as the harbor master.
Which is okay. And just think about some of these others, and well, the one underneath it, gantry.
Right.
Whether or not we need it, we haven't had, since we've switched arrangements there in terms of floats. We now have wider floats, and we switched some of the change in how it's supported. Depends on who you talk to about the need for that. And when you put you add to that the location of it, then certain people lose support for the whole idea. It's a thought that keeps coming and then stopping, and then, to be quite honest, when it gets to an impasse, it jumps back down the list again, or falls off the list, and we start working on the other things until we get some energy or coordinations there. Or decide, or come back and say, let's cross it off the list.
Yeah.
Which we haven't done either.
And then you have something like, you know, the sand zone neighbor issue pop up, or Townhouse Road washes out after a freak storm, and then all bets are off in terms of whatever best laid plans we or you had for what you were going to get done. Which, I mean, that's always going to happen.
Right.
It's going, you know, it's the widget. It's something is going
Right.
to come up that has to be dealt with. Like on the following page of the discretionary or non-funded items, like our hot water system here at the town office deciding to start to fail rapidly.
You want me to turn the page to those ones?
Well, should we first talk about which ones on these 2 pages are priorities of board members?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yellow
so.
ribbons,
And I
okay.
guess the question I would pose to the board, you know, I feel like this is sort of my drum to beat when we have, when citizens come before us, or when select board members bring up, you know, kind of the new shiny thing to work on, is like, you know, we have, there's limited bandwidth in our ability to get things done. And so it's illuminating to kind of see it all in yellow and green, not black and white. But, you know, knowing that, you know, between David and our staff time, you know, we're sort of operating I don't want to say at max capacity, but there isn't a lot of wiggle room with the inevitable fires that come up that have to get put out. And so as we move into these discretionary or non-funded, and I don't necessarily expect us to come away with like pure clarity, because then we're going to move into budget season and there's going to be a whole host of all of our department heads and committees with their wants and wish lists. But this is certainly helping me filter through some things in terms of, I guess, what we're going to ask our voters for, and or what we're asking David or the staff to spend their time doing, knowing that it's a precious commodity. So that being said, of these 2 pages of, essentially our marching orders from our voters, it seems obvious to me that the townhouse road is non-negotiable. I mean, that's just going to have to happen as expeditiously as we can, because we've been working on it for years and there's really a narrow window of time that can get done in terms of putting things out to bid and having the work done. So thoughts from the board on other aspects of all of these biddings, it's safe to say that those have their own schedule. I mean, they're essentially non-negotiables, because we have to bid them. We ought to. I wouldn't want us to just be like, fuck it.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Pardon me. The heck with that, and not not take care of town business. So I guess maybe the latter 2/3 of this list are things that we could offer David some clarity on.
Yeah, so I'll say for myself, email addresses are, when looking at these 2 things, it's less important to me. It's important, but in terms of, like, I personally, the things that really stand out are the harbor webcam. It sounds like we're really close, and I'm sort of like working backwards from the oldest stuff that I can recall.
Mm-hmm.
The harbor cam, I don't see the need for the gantry at this point. And the launching ramp design and permitting, I think that's pretty important in terms of just having that in place and giving that service to our residents. And that we approved that a while ago. So for me, the webcam and the launching ramp are like top priority on these 2 pages.
I agree completely. I think we owe it to that the harbor was sort of not necessarily neglected, but sort of, it was kind of its own its own way. And in order to not lose momentum and also the good work that the harbor committee put in, and since the money is there, and recognizing, especially with the launching ramp, that is a long-term process in and of itself, that dedicating some concentrated effort towards keeping that ball rolling so that we don't lose that momentum.
Well, keeping that ball rolling also gets us closer to getting some clarity on that property
Mm-hmm.
that the sewer district has.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to answer that
Right.
question, I would think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just the trash receptacles, I'm not sure how much time that'll take to skin that cat, but Nick sounded pretty dire, the picture he painted, and so
Mm-hmm.
it'd be good to get that resolved.
Yeah, and hearing some feedback from the last harbor committee meeting, there's some level of disappointment on the lack of action.
Yeah, and not, in my own self-defense on that one, once the money got approved in July, I made a call. It rose to the top of the pile, I made a call about it, and it never happened, and I never followed up to chase it down again. So I think we can make it, it's back on the list so that hopefully when we do trash come spring, when we start doing it in the beach, we can expand that effort to pick up the pier as well.
Good.
But like so many of this stuff, and I hope this doesn't come off sound like an excuses, but it's going to. It rises to the top of Dave Kinney's to-do list, or he finds himself with a 5-minute window. He calls the vendor for the email addresses and gets his voicemail and say, "Hey Jim, call me. We got to get this email thing resolved." Click. And then it falls back down, assuming he's going to call me. And then he calls me 2 weeks later and says, "Hey, it's on the top of my list." And well, I'm in the middle of election today. It's don't mean to whine.
Well, so how would it be best for you to work through this list? I mean, in order of priority, because certainly order of priority doesn't necessarily translate to when it's going to get done.
Right. Just simply identifying things that aren't necessarily highlighted in green and yellow,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can figure out a way to get it to occur. Because the internal focus has been on the green and yellows, and the tentative plan for the next couple months are kind of on the green and yellows, just because that's what we saw as priorities. But if there's something that the board think ought to be there, or thinks that we shouldn't be doing, green and yellow, or let's swap one for another or something like that.
I got a question on one of these non-colored items.
Because they're all important.
Yeah. That has the drainage in the ball field.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that, I don't know how bad the situation is. That is, do we have to worry about it being unusable?
That every year, right?
Well,
Okay.
the challenge there
Okay.
is, when do you want to get on the fields and play?
Well, that's right.
I mean, like I mentioned about Penobscot Park, you would not want to go down there and walk around in your flip-flops today, because you'd be, just sinking down in the mud. If you want to get on the ball fields in early April, after we've had a lot of snow and then the spring melt and the rain, it just isn't going to happen.
Well, and not to
If you want to get
open,
on in May, maybe, depending on what spring does. Was it this past year? One of these years, it wasn't too bad. But
yeah. Well,
4 out of 5 is soupy till.
to me, it plays directly into the conversation and the workshop that we're hoping to have with
Right.
kind of the larger maintenance care. Because in years past, if my memory serves correctly, if I'm making things up, tell me, but it was sort of certain users not being on the same page of when to get on the field.
Okay.
So the school has different needs than, say, the community, and so there have been different maintenance plans and programs that resulted in certain damage to the fields.
Yeah.
And to me, that flows directly, and not that I feel like it should get a pin in it simply because, but I think it should get a pin in it because there's so much more to that conversation that has to happen with other parties.
Well, having a bid out there completed, and maybe received, at least having a bid out there would go to advancing a conversation that we're gonna eventually have.
Sure,
Because it's, rather than just have one more question mark
sure.
in that conversation, at least we have, something definitive. Maybe that would speed up that conversation, I don't know.
David, just a sidebar, would it be safe to say that of these 2 pages of funded items, as we move into the discretionary or non-funded items, if the board recognizes one of the last categories as something that is a priority, that something on these 2 pages are going to have to get moved down the list? Or
Yeah, I mean-
change in order of importance?
Yes, I mean, obviously, there's only so many of us here doing the town's work. And we can multitask in terms of working a little bit on, 2 or 3 of these items, and then a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and then go back. But at any one time, any one person can only work on one thing.
Right.
And so if there are things on the discretionary non-funded items that could soon be funded because we have some town meeting stuff there, those are obviously going to move up onto the list of we got to do faster, sooner. I mean, we obviously need to have water here in the town office, and we need to have a heating system that's going to continue to function. So, yeah, I mean, no matter what, if you move something up on the list, something else is going down, or somebody else is going to be working more, or we need more people, one or the other.
And to that point,
Yeah.
can I just say that, I'm here until June, and then I'm not going to run again because I'm moving. The things that I put forth, so like the email addresses, I was part of that, and when we get to the EV charger, anything I can do to contribute hours to moving things forward, I would like to. So let me know if I can be helpful on at least those 2 projects.
I can think of one on the discretionary that I'm going to frustrate back in your lap. But yes, thank you. And I think that, I've had others off at the same thing, and we're just trying to, the fear, not the fear, but the concern is, once again, that we're not doing the things that you think are priorities, or when somebody calls and says, I want to, jump everything and focus on this, I need to be able to say in good conscience, well, we'll work you in, but you're not number one. How do you say that in a nice way? We're all here trying to do the citizens call, whatever.
Right, as best we can, yeah. So of the funded items, of the things that are not categorized in a green or yellow, so is the board in concurrence with Josh's suggestion of emails sort of happening as it organically works, rather than trying to make a date and make it happen?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And it looks like, so the security camera is happening. What about items on the harbor? Is everybody okay with what Josh and I sputtered out so far?
So didn't the harbor committee chair come to us maybe 2 years ago now and say, we're gonna hold off on the gantry because it's working pretty well down there? I don't think I'd get that off the list.
Yeah.
Even though we've appropriated money for it,
Yeah.
I'd get it off the list.
Yeah, we can have that conversation at budget time, what to do with the funds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of it, trash receptacle, yeah, it's needed. It seems like that is having that there would take care of a few things.
Yeah, it's all kind of quality of life
Yeah.
for our users.
And the ladder, make a decision where it's gonna go and tell them where it's going.
It has. Dark Harbor knows where it's going, and that was just on their to-do list.
But it's been on their to-do list for a while too, right? I mean, I know they've been good to us and everything, but, and maybe I'm just being an asshole here, excuse me. I should have said
Oh
that.
boy, we're 2 for 2 tonight, that's great.
Well, maybe it's just the frustration, I'm sorry, I should not have said that. But,
FCC loves
you
us.
know, if they don't have time to do it, maybe somebody else does. I hate to say that, they've done a lot for us and done a good job,
But it should be
This is 2
there
years and-
for boating season. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
there is a ladder there currently.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that for a safety purpose, that we have a ladder,
yeah,
so someone
yes,
could get out
that's
if
my
they
big
need
thing,
to.
is the safety.
Yeah.
This
piece
was
of
the
it.
secondary ladder that had been cut off.
This is a replacement for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
but that one's still there too.
would it be fair, make sense to set the goal to have that for,
Yeah.
next boating season?
Well, I think since we're talking, it's easy enough for me to just see my helper across the hall tomorrow and just say,
Get it done?
Yeah.
nudge Doc Carver.
Okay.
And just like he knows, I'm gonna nudge Jim,
So,
nudge LCI again.
Well, I got a question, going back to the launching ramp. And what exactly needs to be done in design-wise?
Well, we have
What
a
do we have-
conceptual
yeah.
design that the board wished to move forward with. Part of that design, I believe, just for my memory, encompasses some of the adjacent property,
Mhm.
which the plant has now been removed, or is in the process of being removed. They were beaten on it the other day with a giant excavator, pulling it apart. The district didn't seem too overly enthusiastic to make their next plan be known. We went toured with them.
yeah,
So we'll need to get somebody on board to do the next thing, which is get it permitted and come up with a cost estimate, which will probably scare all of us.
mhm.
And if neighboring land isn't available to us, we may have to rework that conceptual plan some.
All right, second question is on that, and I guess I should know this, I mean, is that the road going down the ferry terminal, off which, the ramp will go. Anyway, is that DOT, is that
Mhm.
continuation of 173?
It
Mhm.
is.
Okay, so we've got to get DOT into it at some point, I would think. Maybe we don't. Are they gonna come in and slow things down?
No, I think they probably would be, well, depending on which arm you talk to there, they'd probably be enthusiastic about additional public access into the water. I mean, they're in boat transportation, boats transportation, and
Yeah.
let's make it happen. We certainly will need to work not only with the Department of Environmental Protection in terms of permitting, but it'll definitely have to go to DOT to make sure that we, have access onto their road.
Yeah.
We do now, so it'll just be, I think it's more, myself, an enhancement to an existing activity. So it may bring some additional activity there, but I don't think it's gonna be overwhelming. Even if it was the best launching ramp in all the world, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be overwhelmed with use until somebody figures out what to do with the trailer and the truck that you brought a boat on.
Mhm. Okay.
However, a lot of stuff gets launched, once a year and retrieved once a year, which could be radically better. Improve ramp.
And the waiting route structure for pedestrians.
That's kind of hinged, in my mind, on doing the pier inspection.
Yeah.
Because who wants to put a new structure on an old foundation?
But also when we had our last joint Islesboro, gosh, that's probably something that should be on this list. Joint Islesboro meeting. It's been a while since pre-COVID, right? Since
Oh my God, it has been.
we met with the Islesboro selectmen, but that was, from my memory, something that they really had asked for multiple years. So it sort of feels like a promise to our neighboring community too.
Agreed.
So, yeah, not letting that linger too much longer. Makes a lot of sense.
So the pier inspection, that's something, we don't have that in the works or any of that, but we gotta get it. Definitely needs to be looked at again.
It really needs to be looked at, if not annually, every
okay.
2 years, just to make sure that
Yeah.
the worms haven't gotten to it or something, and
Okay.
Yeah, because the last report was 3 years ago?
Yeah, probably now. It was pre-COVID, yeah. Because when we did the deck, which was which was two summers ago, 2 springs ago, 2020. The stuff was serviceable or in good condition, because otherwise we wouldn't put a new deck on a crappy whatever, but
those underpinnings.
it's in the water, and there's steel in the water, galvanized, but still, I suspect those pins after 30 plus years are.
So that part of it remains a priority,
Yeah.
and that knocks pending that just keeps the pedestrian waiting roof structure
Down
until we have some information to make a decision.
And is it correct, so the individual that did the pier inspection did a visual inspection of the underpinnings, but didn't do like a dive
Right, he
or
did.
a more investigative.
Visual from waterline up.
Right.
There isn't a lot of that pier that's actually underwater, had good draining tides, but still you can't.
But like a fastener test to see the life of the.
Right,
So
we didn't do any, I don't want to use the word destructive, but we didn't take anything apart to look.
would it make sense to add that into this year's budget for a conversation to get a quote on that more, that more investigative assessment of the fastener health of the pier and the walkway, so that potentially we can make a plan for not this coming year, but the following year to build out some of the stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay. Are we good on the harbor for now?
Well, yeah, we mentioned, you mentioned the harbor ordinance changes.
Yeah.
We want to get that ball rolling, and it's a timeline situation as well.
Yeah, and in fact, I sort of, if the board thinks it's all right, I'd be happy to review the harbor committee meeting minutes and kind of just start to go through, because I know there's just some kind of basic housekeeping too of the harbor ordinance that we've got to change some stuff. So I'd be happy to just start kind of going through that to bring the draft to the board so we can get that ball rolling, but I don't think that we'll make it in the next couple of weeks to get it for a June vote, so potentially a November vote, but if, kind of makes sense if we can get those changes from the harbor committee and say, get a draft approved before summer hits, then we can let Sally do her thing and David do his thing, and then potentially have it before the voters for November.
Yeah, that's great.
That gives me a little wiggle room.
Yeah, if you're willing to do that. Great.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I've certainly beat on that enough over the years, so I feel like I
Okay.
put my ordinance where my mouth is, so to speak.
Yeah, even if we voted on something in June, we're not gonna make it happen in 2023, because
Right.
in a full 5 weeks, we'll be sending out renewal applications.
Yeah.
Right, so the timing wouldn't work at all. All right.
And I've written harbor ordinance change on here twice, because I can't find it, even though I was sure it was on here.
So the Penobscot Park is what it is. Is there anything else from anyone on Penobscot Park stuff? Okay. So ball field drainage, what's everyone's thoughts there in terms of how much we should push that agenda, knowing that we want to have another workshop, a joint conversation with the other parties affected? Or do we want to just, like you suggested, Mike, kind of go ahead, put together a bid, have that information in hand, so when we have that workshop?
My personal opinion is it's town infrastructure that should have been maintained years ago. Should have been taken care of years ago. We already have damage. We've got, because of the water, infiltration there at certain times of the year. Can't use the field, especially when they want to use the field. The other thing is the backstop poles are affected by the water that's traveling through there. And you can see them, they're all starting to heave. The fence is starting to heave. And people would argue, well, that happens over time. Well, it doesn't if the drainage is right. So my opinion is we did have a contractor throw a price at us, which I don't even know why he did that, because I don't think it can be done for $10,000 or $12,000.
Oh, that number would be out the window this anyway. Yeah.
So my personal opinion is to be armed with a quote and have in mind that we're going to move forward with it, whether we meet with the school or not, because I feel we should take it back.
Well, we had planned to do that regardless of who was doing the other maintenance work.
And we have money sitting in.
We have some monies in our athletic infrastructure, or whatever that account is called,
Well,
for the drainage.
Okay.
David's question is as much for you as the board. Does it make sense to add that to this year's budget conversation, to have an updated quote in hand so that we can vet it against the monies that we have currently, to decide if that's something we want to try to go forward with in our next fiscal year, or if it's something we have to kind of save towards the future for.
Update the prices.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So David, you talked about Calderwood Road surveying, just kind of living down towards the bottom.
Well, it won't come February,
Yeah.
because when we have mud season again, it's gonna, people are gonna be back. It just, through other things, hasn't risen to the top
Yep.
that's a matter of putting together a request for proposals for engineering services, because it's gonna be more than $8,000 worth of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and getting somebody on board to survey and design it.
Excuse me.
Is how we're going through this helpful, Or are we just sort of
Well,
rehashing?
it's helpful, and we've added some priorities, but we haven't
Right.
downgraded any of the others, because they're all things we want to do.
Mhm.
And I see value in doing all of them.
Mhm.
The challenge is once again going to be, okay, the to-do list didn't get any, it wasn't going to get any shorter.
Well, it's more by when they're completed, right, is more of the, it's like, if we want to have this happen next month, then that by default kicks some things down the list. Or if we want to have it done by next year,
Right.
then it's going to live further down the list. And I'm trying to keep.
And we'll talk about those in November of 2024.
Right. And I've kind of been trying to keep track, and we've certainly bumped some things down to the bottom of the list, not necessarily very major ones.
Well, at least on the things you've moved to the more towards the bottom of the list, when, because every one of these items had somebody at one point that was the champion of it. And when the champion calls to say, where's the $1 billion flagpole, we can say that is on the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
In a nice, respectful way. It's
Yeah.
just not at the top.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're not just sort of
Adding, we don't want to turn everything into green,
yeah.
because I'll go home and cry. Not that it's about me, but I will. No.
I don't want to washing machine all of these ideas into just a different and less helpful list, I guess. So looking down through the rest of the list, so road improvement, I mean, certainly we know come the freeze thaw cycle, it's going to be anyone who lives on a gravel road is going to be throwing aspersions and opinions and complaints and all kinds of things around.
Well, and we did try a few different techniques this past spring, which I don't know if they'll bear fruit for subsequent years or if it'll just be more of the same. But we're all going to find out here in 2 short months.
Yeah.
Or 3.
So any thoughts on where that's living in terms of top, bottom, or middle of the list?
I think we ought to be making some progress towards it so that when 3 months from now rolls around and podium's over here and people are, what are you doing? At least we'll be doing something.
Yeah.
Agreed. So what does that look like to you in terms of bottom, middle?
Just beyond yellow.
Okay.
How's that?
Yeah.
So the tennis court and the special town meeting, you guys decided to go with. I guess that is what it is.
The wheels are in motion.
Yep.
I think anything on the funded list that's in green is, the train's left the station, so to speak.
Yeah.
And we're chugging ahead, and the yellow items that are part of that green are just gonna become green as soon as the green's done.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So for sidewalks, it makes sense in January for the board to do what it said it was going to do and have a discussion about the concept, the scope, and then.
Well, I think the board already did, and they assigned Selectman Ray
I thought that was a conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
to hold this stakeholder meeting, and staff was supposed to put together the plan so we could have something to
Okay.
share with everybody for
Okay,
what was budgeted. And then tragedy befell Selectman Ray, and it fell so far off the priority list after that
Sorry, I wasn't thinking about it either. I had other things on my head.
but it didn't fall off the list, it just fell down the list, and now we need to, it'd be nice to move that up so that should either consensus be reached or the board need to make a decision on its own, we can do that before construction season rolled around.
yeah, well, and to the point of matching grants that exist out there and some monies that we already have in the budget, I think it should go on this budget cycle conversation of perhaps putting some additional funds. I don't have a quantity in mind, but in the spirit of just sort of keeping the ball rolling and keeping the conversation somewhat viable, pretty much all the grant opportunities are of a matching sort, or we pay for it outright.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, this effort, the original concept that was approved was basically a homegrown effort, just
right,
paved walkway, like what you see in the middle of Breezemere Park,
right.
only wider.
Yeah. And it was also done pre-inflationary prices. So
Yeah,
the
right.
money was given,
Right.
which may,
Don't say the
oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, whatever money, the 10 grand that was appropriated, I think it was 10.
Mhm.
I think so.
Yeah, it may not be a drop, it may be pretty insignificant.
But we also
By the time we
had,
get to it.
not to delve into the weeds like I told you I didn't want to, we also had some offers from stakeholders about perhaps donating some materials and labor and equipment to do,
Yeah.
the grunt work part of it, and then pretty work on top.
Yeah.
We might have to hire out. So where there's a will, there's a way. Well, we just need to follow through on the list.
So Breezemere, basically, bandstand and then the parking. Thoughts there?
We need to do the roof.
Yeah.
You go down and look at the roof, there's shingles now with the winds that have,
Is it leaking?
not that I'm aware of, but it's not too far from it.
Yeah.
So
It's-
that's why you've got beginning of the new year to get those.
Yeah, I mean, we plan to do it in this fiscal year, and
Yep.
we just need to get a bid out the door, because it'd be nice to get that done before, too much of the summer season arrived.
Yeah.
But parts of that are just from the ground looking up, don't look good.
And parking, similar.
Yeah, but parking the place is being loved to death.
Yeah.
And hasn't seen an awful lot of attention, needs to be spruced up.
Mhm.
So it's upgrading or sprucing up what we have there. It's not expanding. It's
No.
not, it's just cleaning up what we've
It's
got.
taking the existing footprint
Yeah,
and
okay.
shaping it back up and
Okay.
putting a surface on it, and might put some stripes down, a little bit of bark.
Whoa.
So that's going big time.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, all right.
Okay,
We're
moving
getting into
on.
weeds.
David, do you want to take us through the discretionary or non-funded, a terrifying amount of green on this?
There is, but a lot of this is, once the green gets going, it'll it'll get funded or it won't get funded, and then we'll move it up onto the funded list.
Mhm.
So the town office mechanical, we're still plugging away. We hope to have a warrant for you people to review, and then the budget committee, and then get some funding. Same with, I guess, all the mechanical systems there. Midco Solid Waste fiscal year 24 budget, don't have a clue. I just know that in the past, it's involved some time, because last I knew I was on the finance committee. I might not be anymore, and it's usually done by the end of December, and
Any word on that?
gonna have
Gentlemen.
something in January, but
January,
January is when we first meet
yeah.
to discuss the budget.
I
believe
voiced my
you're still on the
concerns,
finance
that's
committee.
all I can do.
Yeah.
and,
You know, just one,
it's
I wasn't happy. You know, they canceled the meeting, that's why we canceling the meeting, and it's because the manager didn't have anything for the board, and I said, well, that's not accurate.
Yeah.
The manager should have a budget for the board, and I was met with, we have never met a deadline, and everybody's been okay, and we'll have something for you in January. And I said, well, I just don't think that that's acceptable when we need to do the right thing here for the towns. So, and I was wished happy holidays.
my concern from an administrative perspective is, as deadlines approach, it's one thing if you've got a December deadline that you all look at and say, this isn't really where we need to be. Can we kick the can till January? I mean, I don't really want to kick a can, believe me. But when the can gets kicked before you even look at it, if you get together in January and it isn't what you all anticipated, and you have to send somebody back to look at it and revise it, and then meet in February,
Right.
you know, it just, or the pressure is on just to approve something that doesn't get vetted as well as it possibly could or should, which can lead to, I'm not saying Midco Solid Waste does this, but I've been around municipal government for too many years. Things can get inflated or cushioned, and you just, it's not a good budgetary practice. And if we're gonna have agreements that say we're gonna do things by certain times, it's nice to do them by then.
That's the message I tried to get out
I
there.
know. And
It's gonna be so frustrating.
it's not that we've never done it, because we have. Because I've been here a long time, but, you know.
Yeah.
that-
Well,
that-
we've been diligently trying to make the deadlines, and there have been times when we were close since my tenure there.
Mhm.
But this is we're gonna meet in January, and we'll have a number for you.
Well, and again, it's not about me, but if I'm on the finance committee, and we think we're gonna be spending a lot of time in January on that budget, it's gonna be very challenging, because we're gonna have our own budget to do in January,
Correct.
Right.
which takes a lot of time
Yeah.
and attention, and
It doesn't set anyone up for success.
anyhow,
Yep.
Okay.
beating that horse.
So sewer district, we kind of touched on that. I mean, I sort of got the sense that they hadn't really even considered, there was some sort of like satellite conversations happening at the end of that tour that we did that was great.
Yeah.
Going back to the harbor and the design that we have and doing what's best for our users down there, the parking scene is not good. I mean, it's sort of
Abysmal.
bare earth patch, and it doesn't look professional. It doesn't feel respectful for the people that have to go down there and park every morning, and so am not sure what we can or should do to try to further that conversation. Yeah.
Well, I'm of the opinion that the direct inquiry
Yeah.
to the landowners
Yeah.
and to get clarity is the best thing to do.
From the sewer district.
Yeah, to ask the sewer district, say, hey, what do you want to do here, guys? Yeah, and get it down in writing as best we can now. And try to get a commitment, yes, no, maybe, just try to define, clarify maybe some, And at least have eye contact. We weren't having eye contact last meeting.
Yeah,
At least
well,
if we can get that far, we're making progress.
yeah, and they definitely, said, well, we can't just give it away. We need, I think they're concerned about revenue opportunities, which is completely understandable. The board had directed myself and David to send a really direct letter, which we didn't do because then we were going to have that tour came up, and we sort of thought that we could have that conversation organically, but perhaps what David and I should do is actually write that direct communication saying,
Absolutely.
yes or no. Can we just have clarity? Are you interested in exploring this option with us or not, so that we can move forward with whatever concept?
We could share the conceptual plan that shows that
Yeah.
we had a plan.
Yeah. I got the sense that they were it was maybe a little forest for the trees for them. There's a lot going on.
I get the
at the
sense after that meeting, just bumping into Chris Nickerson, that group is definitely interested to talk.
Great.
And,
Okay.
the building's down now, so I think that was part of
The building is down now?
the building's down.
Yeah.
And luckily I connected the high school, I keep forgetting the name of it. Danny Solomon works with high school students there to deconstruct buildings and deconstruct things and use those materials to build new things. And
Very
they connected,
cool.
and the high school students were actually part of
So that they
Very
have
cool.
construction. Yeah. So they salvaged. I'm going to
That's
talk to Danny soon and find out how much they salvaged. But they were there with hammers and
Oh, that's so
all the stuff.
cool.
That's
all the
good.
stuff for it.
All right. So David and I will get that communication, and then hopefully a meeting can result from that where we get some clarity.
Yep.
All right. So broadband. David, I guess David, you were working down through this meeting, and then we got sidetracked, or this list.
Probably
so.
everybody's tired of hearing me talk.
No.
Broadband, we've had some conversations about the next round of Maine Connectivity Authority grants, which the last time I looked at their site still had this stuff up for their November application. So I don't know what their timeline is, but we don't want to miss it. That's why it's on the list.
Yeah.
The digital equity and inclusion plan, broadband committee's working on.
Yep.
I don't really have any.
It'll be done and presented at our December 27th meeting.
Cool.
We do need an updated charge to continue existing.
Yep.
until-
So that's the next thing, and that was what I was going to hit you up for.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna
Say-
say, I feel like you would be the authority to say this is what we need and this is how
Well,
much time we need.
All the updated charge needs to say is that we have a timeline extension to December 27th. That's it.
Just email
So
David.
I'll do that.
What does the charge say now? That I know.
September?
We extended it and then we
Extended.
extended it again.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, just email David.
Okay. So that's all we need
All right.
until December 27th. And then after that, we will have another proposed charge that our committee will come up with and,
All right.
Okay.
and present then.
Cool. Somehow the formatting is a little screwed up. The EMS performance meeting is under the broadband section, but January 26th is the next meeting of the EMS performance committee. Maybe.
That should be interesting.
So when did you meet last? Like actually meet?
Was that October?
So, I don't know.
What date was that?
Yeah, it was October.
Yeah,
Okay. And are you supposed to meet quarterly?
Quarterly.
yeah.
Okay.
We set the meetings at that the last October meeting.
Okay.
We had really great attendance.
Good. Oh, great.
And so we very clearly said, these are the dates that we're going to be meeting.
Get them on your calendar now.
Yeah.
I guess by default, we're doing the agenda, or you are, or we are.
Mm-hmm.
Lakes and Ponds Committee at some point is gonna come talk to you about their updated unencapsulated flotation. It's just on there.
Will that be just part of their, the annual report from their chair?
Well, they've been talking about it at their meeting, and I'm hoping they're not planning on doing it at the budget meeting. I'm hoping they're planning on coming and saying, hey, everything's, or
Yeah, okay,
updating those numbers.
okay.
Something that was supposed to be done in May of 2022
Yeah.
was a little issue thing, paper with the McGonagall dams, but I don't think it's high on Audra's to-do list, and it certainly hasn't been high on mine either since it's now December. It's not time.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I can't put it more than, green. I don't know.
Gunhook Dam?
I
It's
don't
not
know.
even yellow.
I know, there's no color on it because it was done 6 months ago, but it wasn't done.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you explain that?
Yeah, we were, when you folks met with the Camden Select Board about McGonagall dams, you gave an assignment to the Camden Town Manager and myself to kind of, I don't know if it was to create an issue paper about what the steps would be in terms of either formalizing or unformalizing or getting rid of
Right.
the committee's work, and gave us a May deadline, and neither one of us did it. Or
Yeah.
I didn't do it. Okay. She didn't do it.
I mean, at this point, I feel like we have put in so much effort in trying to communicate with them, being proactive. If they're not interested in prioritizing this communication or a formal relationship regarding management of the dams, like, it's in their court, and both organizationally and financially.
Yeah, but would it hurt to remind them of that fact?
No,
Mm.
it wouldn't hurt for me to do what was assigned to
Yeah.
our end, and then send it that way. Just say, hey, we were supposed to do this for May. Here's
Mhm.
my list.
Well, I'm thinking rather than just letting it nourish it or not talking about
Lack
it.
of inertia.
Yeah, well, like
Whatever that
yeah,
is.
letting that decide the issue,
Yeah.
and why don't we just, come down and say something, say, what are we doing here, folks?
Here's where we're
And we've done this, and ball's in your court.
Yeah, we've sent them several letters to that effect.
I guess, yeah, and maybe we need a letter reminding them that
We
we
have-
sent them several letters, and.
Well, we didn't
Go
do
back.
the last assignment. Just never got to the top of the green list. It's still not on the green list.
Yeah.
I'm saying bypass the assignment, just send them a quick letter. That's what I'd suggest, And say,
Well,
and maybe acknowledge that fact in the letter, that, everything's been bypassed, or it hasn't happened yet. And say, ball's in your court, thank you, guys, and.
So where it stands, they would like us to pay. Did they ever send us an invoice for?
no, they
some-
haven't billed us in quite a while.
Okay.
I mean,
for
it's,
damage,
we're
and
we're
I think-
operating on a very, very old agreement that really has
Ancient.
no relevance. And I think ultimately what that workshop came down to was, we need to look at this agreement and whatever Camden has going on, whatever we have going on, and figure out, does it make sense to have some sort of, essentially what David said, do we rewrite the whole thing? Do we renew it and agree to those terms? Do we change it? What does that look like?
Yeah, we were supposed to work on some the questions to lead us to structure,
Right.
and we didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think on our side, we could probably put together that questions of structure, or for lack of a better word to call them, and use that as the prompt to say, we got this assignment a while ago, here's where we are.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
And then report back to you next year that it was done anywhere. I think that, that they're likely struggling with the same thing we are. We've got a to-do list, and they've got their own to-do lists, and they've got a lot, they obviously, if you read the papers, they've got a lot going with some of the other dams in town.
Yeah.
Let alone the East and West Dam, that is requiring a lot of effort and attention on their behalf. So I can understand how they could kind of say, well, that's okay, those are quiet up there, but.
Yeah, but the point that came up in the workshop is that, it's a big picture thing.
Yep.
It's more than just the dams. It's
Yeah.
multiple years of budgets. It's
Oh, yeah,
operating in a
there's-
reactionary way versus a planned and
Well-
proactive way, or in an ecological way.
Yeah, I mean, none of our infrastructure is getting any younger. And as time goes on, work and cost mount, and you can ignore it. Not to say they're doing that, but you can ignore it, and then all of a sudden it becomes a water system leak, and it's like, oh, didn't even know it was there. So it's good to try to be proactive and get ahead of it versus catch up. I guess that's kind of what this whole effort of looking at stuff is, to keep us on it instead of behind it.
Is the current agreement simply that to protect them, if they have any major costs to keep the dam up, they can
The current
contribute some cost to us? Or?
Yeah, the current agreement was handshake 30 years ago. They created a policy in Camden and was approved here in Lincolnville that there was supposed to be a Lincolnville Dam Committee, which hasn't met. They included people from Lincolnville
They haven't populated it in
a while.
a very long time.
And the cost share was 2/3 Camden, 1/3 Lincolnville. And we contributed to that. Then a couple of managers ago, we didn't get billed for a couple of years, and the committee stopped meeting. Committee would get together, setting similar to this, and at budget time, come up with a budget, 5,000, 10,000, 20, whatever. And all parties there would agree that this is what they were going to recommend to the Camden Select Board to be included in Camden budget. And then the Lincolnville portion was included in the Lincolnville budget. And as long as it got approved in Camden and got approved here, they do the work, we send them a check, they document what it was. And then with the previous Camden manager, they slowly got away from having committee meetings, and we didn't get billed for quite a while, even though at times I'd be like, are we going to get a bill, or are we going to get prompted, or have a meeting?
And then they invoiced us.
And then that manager left in the interim, which was the previous manager, came back.
Roger.
And now Roberta,
Oh, yeah.
she came back and said, holy moly, we've got outstanding costs here, and can we recoup this? So they sent us an invoice and we paid it, because that's what our agreement had been. And then we stopped having meetings again, or didn't have meetings. And after a while, we got a bill, and it was like, what do we do with this? And no meeting, no pay. So we stopped paying. And I didn't, and then we wrote, former Selectman Barrows, the board's direction, wrote a couple of letters saying, we need to talk about this, and get back to having a committee and having conversations, and just wasn't high on their priority list.
Yeah, essentially, we're not funding something that we don't have
Any
any,
control over.
yeah, any input or
Knowledge
awareness.
of what
and-
they're doing.
And, you know, unfortunately, the media and some of their decisions with their budget didn't help anything when they're talking, you know, multi-million dollar projects and big changes. And so they're like, okay, hang on, we have to have representation here. And then the workshop, it became very clear that this instrument that we've been working off of is so out of date. It's not reflective of where Camden is or where Lincolnville is anymore.
So is there anything we should be doing to remove ourselves from future liability?
I mean, is it a binding legal
No.
agreement technically?
Well, there's a lot of precedent though, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot in reviewing both what Camden accepted. It's, yeah, there's nothing that necessarily,
We
Falls
also,
on us.
a previous iteration of the board did have some conversations with our own town attorney about some of the issues you brought up.
Okay.
but, you know, in the spirit of, you know, even though it doesn't fall, the dams don't fall, and we're totally getting in the weeds, but,
Yeah.
but like, even though the dams don't fall in our town, the implications could be massive for a lot of our property owners if
And our
other-
taxpayers.
if other decisions were made in another community. So it definitely behooves us to have some mechanism.
But most likely, anything that would affect our people, there'd be so many people screaming
Mhm.
on the end.
Oh, you think so? Yeah.
On the yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
They
We're-
got, they got the message that we need to be involved. They got that
Yeah.
message loud and clear.
Unless they would rather not deal with us and just pay the whole thing and then everyone's happy.
Right.
And maybe they feel that way on some
Yeah.
level.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So
Okay.
having completely gotten sidetracked.
sorry.
No. Backstory is important. You want to pick up where we left
Oh, yeah,
off?
because Council of Governments, Matt Eddy, their executive director, or one of his, I think it's gonna be the guy himself, will be here at your next meeting on Monday to tell you what they can do and what they do and why they exist, and so, yeah. Breezemere flow repairs is kind of like the mechanical systems that
Mhm.
coming. Athletic field maintenance, we've been chasing each other's tails on that one with the school board.
Yeah.
To have a meeting, but as you can tell, it hasn't happened. I'd like to think we could get it arranged before we get too far into budget conversations. I see I can't type or spell, but Village Partnership Initiative, not an initiative, was when we talked to DOT about sidewalks or road improvements in the village, and there's no deadline because there's not, we haven't taken any initiative beyond that first meeting.
Mhm.
EV charging, same thing. That's a lot of work, by the way.
Sorry.
It's all right. We're not afraid of work, but
In terms of just researching the cost of them or
well,
like how to implement it.
the grant requires you to have real quotes from somebody to do the work, and that's work. And trying to figure out a good location is a scratcher, but we'll come up with something.
Do they need something more specific than what we decided on last meeting?
Yes.
In the general area of?
Yeah, they want basically have a quote from contractor to install it.
And then,
Who's gonna be, where it's gonna be, when it'll be done.
and where it will be, I mean, they
Yes.
need to see it on a map, more or less, the parking
Yes.
space? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just throw this out there and you all may scream bloody murder, but putting aside the dire parking issue at Lincolnville Beach, for this project, for EV charging, people plugging in, doing their business and driving away, 2 spots directly on Route 1 would make the most sense, I would think, for that purpose, putting aside parking, but then obviously you have to keep in mind parking, but that would be, I think, in a perfect world, the places that people can get in, get out quickly, it makes the most sense.
And send you a map and have you go.
Yeah, that would be really helpful,
actually,
actually, if you
Okay.
could get that in for our next agenda
Okay.
to review that.
Part of our, the other David and I, if I say David, I'm not referring to myself as a person. David and I went down and looked, and we started talking about at the beach. And started talking about locations, and then you have to be careful about, you don't want to run a cord across the sidewalk when somebody plugs in, but you.
Oh, right.
And then you got to be careful about, well, how do we plow snow? And do we plow? We have to plow snow because you have to keep these spots open.
Yeah.
We can have a conversation, Josh, and get that. There's just, every time it's like, this is a great spot. Then you say, well, what about this? Where's the power coming from? And what are we going to have to dig through to get there? But where there's a will, there's a way. There's charge stations, as you know, all around the world. So Lincolnville's not unique in that challenge.
Okay.
Maybe I ought to get you and I and David together.
That sounds like a good idea.
Sounds good.
Coastal Mountain Search and Rescue, we need a little bit of a letter of understanding about the spaces that they're going to be or continue to use, and the truck transfer. Nobody seems to excited to say right now, so just put early 2023 on there, and somebody seems too disappointed by that.
Yeah.
Long range thing, the boat club came and talked to us about a possible agreement for rack storage of Breezemere. I told them I'd share with them the lease agreement we had with Lake City Floats. Still haven't done it, but
Shared with them the lease agreement?
yeah,
Oh.
that one, to see if that was something that we could take.
They haven't squawked about it yet either, have they?
No, but what, unfortunately, human nature being no, they have not. What'll happen is, summer will be closing into upon us, and then there'll be, well, they'd like to have a rack, and it's like, try to plan instead of crisis management.
Yeah.
The general gender neutral ordinance and policy revisions. We only have 30-something ordinances and numerous policies that over time we're just gonna have to pick away at.
It's a large undertaking.
Yeah, and this part makes it even worse. When we do the undertaking, we'll probably want to look at, do we even need to have this ordinance? We've got some ordinances been on the books for 30 or 40 years without revision, and there may be, I'm trying to think of them. There's a barking dog ordinance or whatever it's called, which might have I'm making this up, $10 fine, that we gotta go to collecting court for. Seriously? Who's gonna summon somebody? And if they do, are we really gonna take them to court for $10? And some of these things we may need to look at in totality, not just simply changing board of selectmen to select board.
Well,
Not to say that shouldn't be done, but I think maybe when you look at the harbor ordinance lately,
yeah, I'll just knock
Start
that
with
one out.
well, at least that one's in Word format, not just paper.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah, yeah.
And we can, you could do a word search, find board of selectmen,
Yeah.
Well, so my question is with this LD 2003
Yep.
and the idea of hiring a consultant, could this be part of that conversation potentially?
Well, I'd certainly, any ordinance that we were to look to amend at this point, I would take it for other reasons, whether it be the land use ordinance because of LD 2003.
2000.
Right, there's no real way to have it roll off the tongue.
If we're going to present changes to ordinances to the public for consideration,
Yeah,
we might as well go through the work of making the gender neutral changes at the same time.
right.
I mean, why do land use ordinance changes in November and then do it again in June
Yeah.
with two different?
Right, so it makes sense to me to potentially look at numbers for hiring an individual to just chew through it.
And that might be a question you might want to ask the MCOG people when they come next week. That's kind of a service they might provide.
Interesting,
They,
okay.
they facilitate conversations in communities, and maybe they do ordinance reviews as well.
Okay, great. And you said that you had an individual that you might want to reach out to.
Well, I
also.
already reached out to him and he kind of didn't say yes, and
Oh.
he didn't say no. He lives here in
No answer.
Lincolnville. And he's like, well, we're coming up on the Christmas holiday. Yeah, I know, we're coming up on something and your to-do list is long like mine is, but maybe you
Yeah.
ought to be. Sometimes you have to plant a seed and let it, germinate, and then you go back and say, hey, what are you thinking?
Okay.
Well, just real quickly, David, how many of those documents, ordinances, are electronic, and versus how many need to be converted into electronic?
The ones that would need to be converted are pretty simple and straightforward. We probably just took the paper one and scanned it and put it on. Probably less than a third are non-electronic. And then they're pretty short.
Yeah, gotcha.
It would take somebody a couple hours of uninterrupted time to maybe not even hours to retype them. And while we're on this page, I added on the harbor ordinance change, which we never found, and the Alsborough meeting.
Okay. So we've got what, I don't know, 3.5 years of work here? Is that right?
There is ample to do, which is good. We're never going to get it all done. I mean, we may get all these things done, but the list, there'll always be a list.
Yeah.
It just is the nature of the beast. But I think it's helpful that there be a recognition that there's a lot of things on the list, so that when the next good thing comes up or the next bad thing comes up, there's a recognition of, yeah, we can add that to the list, but then we have to figure out where it falls in that list. That makes sense at all.
Yeah.
So, David, did we end up offering you any additional clarity in terms of, because I've heard you say it several times, you want to make sure that you're doing the work that the board wants you to do / what the voters have told us all to do.
It was helpful in terms of, I don't think we had prioritized anything that you found objectionable.
Yeah.
It was not all that helpful that you found some things that weren't on the priority list that moved up. But so be it. I didn't have illusions. Just, I think it was helpful for me to rattle on for a couple hours. Yep.
I was just gonna, maybe partially for me, learning more of just this town government whole conundrum, but I always try, in other boards I sit on and such, I try to think of it in the terms of there's a to-do list and there's a backlog.
Mm-hmm.
Backlog isn't to do.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, this group needs to be able to say what is definitively on the to-do list.
Yeah.
Did we do that tonight?
No, I don't think we did.
No.
Well,
We mumbled wrote on some stuff, but we didn't actually say this is on the to-do list
Mm-hmm.
or this is backlog. Because we need to be able to say when the citizen comes yelling at me or any one of us that regardless, whatever we decide on, it's on his to-do list. It's on our to-do list, and versus I'm sorry, but it's on the backlog, or however we want to term it. But if somebody's screaming about a road or whatever the situation is, we need to be able to say we understand and we're sorry we can't get to it right now, but it's backlog.
Yeah.
Whatever. So that's I feel like I don't feel like we gave you much. That's me.
Well, it would have been nice if somebody said, see that thing that's green? Yeah, don't bother.
Which right.
I did, gantry.
That wasn't
That was
green.
huge. Huge.
Right?
That was white. That's backlog.
Yes.
Well,
However you want to phrase it.
Yes.
I guess, and thank you. Yes, I feel much the same way, but at the same time, and not to pick on the EV chargers, but when you suddenly add a very significant project like that, it has massive implications on the to-do list. I mean, we, the board essentially made the EV chargers the to-do list,
Go to the head of the
top
list.
on the to-do list. And we have this whole page. I mean, these are non-discretionary. They may not all be in green, but if these don't happen, we're either not following the law or we're not following the fundamental things that are required to make this town function. So, you know, it's hard because the new shiny cool thing, I mean, I feel like I say it over and over again when, say, affordable housing comes up. It is a worthy and excellent idea. There's absolutely not, I mean, who doesn't want everyone to have affordable housing? However, adopting that as a project, looking for funding and creating all of the structures around it is going to push everything to the bottom of the list. You know, it feels a lot like we have a budget, you know, say we're a household and we have a household budget. We also have a credit card and we keep putting things on the credit card.
Well, it's almost more like the time management, like how much time does a family have to
Right.
develop?
Right. It really isn't about money in this case. I guess that's why I kept asking David, you know, how much time is it going to take you or the staff to complete this? You know, and if there is generously 50 weeks a year in which work is going to be getting done here in the town, we've made the to-do list a couple of years long. I mean, we have made a to-do list. It's just not reasonable, you know, and you know, so I guess, you know, every time we add something to the list or every time we go through budget season and there's a new project, it's just making the feasibility or that timeline of execution of that to-do list that much longer.
So we can't really, going forward, we can't really say, nope, no more projects until we get
No.
our backlog caught up. We can't do that,
No.
but we
No.
certainly can be very cognizant and careful
Yeah.
of what we're doing to maintain the list and help it be reduced a little bit. And I don't know how to do that.
Well, I
To be
think-
real honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not suggesting this, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. I mean, this past year, we increased staffing by 25%. We went from 4 people to 5.
Mhm.
And David is very good at certain things, but he comes at it from a private sector approach and has needed to be brought along to the public sector or the owner side of the equation. And I've told him this numerous times. The easiest part of any project is building it. I mean, it may be difficult to actually do, to build something, but it's the getting the idea, figuring out the details, getting it consensus to get it funded, to get, all those steps leading up to it are more, in my mind, are more difficult than the physical installation of a whatever.
Yeah.
And we could have, a deputy town administrator and a deputy public facilities director, and these things could happen faster, but you'd have to get a whole lot of people on board and convinced that that's a good idea. As long as there's an acknowledgement and a willingness to accept the fact that not everything's getting done today,
Yeah.
we're making progress.
I mean, to your point, Steve, I think I would love to see the board have a meeting like this. I mean, certainly, David and I kind of went over and over and over and over how to format this, how to structure it, how to place some physical structure on a kind of very amorphous, big concept. So, if you look at this as sort of like a version 1.0, and I think my ask of the board is that we make this more than a once every couple of years. If we make it, I don't know if quarterly is too ambitious, or whether we make it part of our select board meeting quarterly to have these kinds of check-ins so that David can be like, wow, look at where this, have an additional sheet of like executed, completed.
Yeah.
And I could really see this being an instrument that we can refer back to so that when a citizen comes in very excited about a project or wanting to take the temperature of, say, the sidewalks or anything, the ladder down at the harbor, trash receptacles down at the harbor, we have an answer for them of where it is in the backlog of the to-do list. It's like, we are working on it, or, we just don't have the bandwidth to take anything new on right now, but let's keep the conversation alive.
I almost wonder if it would be helpful for us and for the public to have this in some sort of, public document, living, breathing document on the website. So people can look at it, and I don't know if that would be annoying. It would end up being frustrating for us, but it could be helpful.
We take a lot of translate. Maybe once we settle, I feel like this is definitely the first draft.
Yeah, yeah.
I think once we kind of settle on like, oh yeah, this works visually.
Yeah.
So that almost anyone, say a new selectman stepping into the role can, because it's a lot of information, and it's also, what we're looking at is we're looking at 4 years of town meetings, of decisions.
Yeah.
that have culminated in this list. And, I mean, as a new selectman, you can't possibly have all of that in your head.
I was scratching my head this weekend reading this.
Yeah.
Your description is spot on as far as to do and, or the way to look at it, to do and backlog. Once it's approved and funded, to me, that's backlog until it's done. It's on the to-do list, but to me, it's backlog. It's not gonna get done immediately. But to me, I'm looking at it like, okay, I gotta manage this list because the voters are expecting this to be done.
You gotta manage both
This is my
lists.
to-do list. There's some stuff here that has to be done and it can't go to the backlog list. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's how you're looking at it, but it doesn't seem like it is.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Very similar. I mean, I look at it from the perspective of there's your required stuff. I love the first list.
Yeah.
The first list was like, well, it's
Yeah.
required. Companies have to make their payroll. They
Yep.
have to do this. They have to do that.
Yep.
Whatever. There's no question about it.
Right.
It
But
starts
then-
getting messy in the,
And your backlog is stuff you still have to do,
Mhm.
but it's not your marching orders for this week.
right.
No, although it is March for us.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, you have your stuff you have to get done now and the stuff that has to be done.
It was interesting to me in preparation of this, because I'm gonna call this 1.1, because we had a meeting similar to this in November of last year.
Mhm.
And I started with that list because I've got a running one with scribbles all over it and whatever else. So I cleaned up a copy, and then I started to handwrite again, semi-nice and neat. And I'm like, wow, we have got a lot done off that list from a year ago.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, to be quite honest, I was getting to the point, I'm like, I'm not getting anything done, even though I'm working every day, but I'm not getting anything done. But it was nice to dig out that old list and say, oh yeah, we did get some things done, crossed a bunch of stuff off. Now, there's still some carry forwards, but.
But what you commented about as a new selectman, I'm looking at this and going,
What the heck does this mean?
and I've heard, and you've been the primary one that said, based on all the stuff that we have going on here, our bandwidth, but there's probably 3 or 4 things I might have voted differently on over the last 3 months if I had this.
Oh, if you had that document
had this full view.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's neither here
Yeah,
nor
it's
there.
hard to keep it all, it's hard to
Right.
keep it all
Oh,
at
yeah.
the forefront, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And still move on.
This has
A
been
lot.
very helpful.
Mhm.
And
Well-
at least once a year, but even twice a
I
year.
like the quarterly idea myself, but, because I like the quarterly idea largely because we come up against budget time so quickly, so soon.
Yeah.
And
And budget always seems so far away in, say, July, when someone's
Right,
coming in
exactly,
with a
yeah.
really enthusiastic
Yeah, sure.
idea, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
trying to say, well,
and once we do decide on a physical format, make this all readily understandable, it would be nice if it would be the kind of thing where we could like project on that blank screen back there, and at least quarterly, we can just look at it and say, oh, yeah, right.
mhm.
And just check things off.
I could see the process. I think the first couple of times will be a little more process oriented, but, I think if this does become something that the board does with regularity, I think the process will go a lot more quickly
Yeah.
too, in terms of just really taking the temperature and seeing where we are, and serving as a device that we can take with us, have in our binder always, so that when the conversations come up of a new idea, it's like, okay, well, is this new idea more important than
Checklist.
this?
It makes sense, but.
Yeah.
If it ends up being this is an Excel spreadsheet of some sort, but having the status column there, but you don't delete things, you mark them as complete, and then you filter,
Mhm.
and then you can actually pull up and say, look at everything we've completed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is that
It's a good
some
feel
people
good.
don't
could also be helpful, in addition to that, having like the origin, like when were these passed? So you just know how,
Oh, start to finish.
how long it's been on the list.
How long did it take?
Which David and I talked about, and it just, it's a lot of information to try to put into a format that makes sense, and David did a really great job of kind of jamming this all in, but yeah, have it, when did the voters vote on it?
Yeah.
And how long have we been working on it or saving up for it, because certainly the Townhouse Road culvert, that's something that quite necessarily was a multi-year project. It's not just that we've been not getting it done. So categorizing things in that way too would be really helpful, that we're saving up towards this, or that it's just backlogged. But I like your idea, Steve, of having that accomplished list, because it's also good to acknowledge all of the very good work that David, the staff, and we get done.
But it's oftentimes the thing where you can, if somebody is asking questions, or if you make this available to the townspeople, like, well, let's filter on accomplishments, and because that's what they forget that very quickly. Of course.
Yeah.
We forget that.
Yeah.
So do I.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, you probably should have included a copy of your list where you're like.
That's all right.
Anything else from anybody, David? Follow-ups?
No, I'm tired of talking. One more out
Well,
today. We do it again tomorrow.
I was really hoping we'd get this done in a couple hours, and we're not far off. So thank you all so much for coming in on a off Monday. But I think that this was a really great exercise to go through.
It's an eye opener.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
It
Sobering.
really is. It is sober.
Well, I'm always impressed at how much this little town gets done with the staff we provide really high quality services. We've got some really innovative projects going on, and I just think we do a really good job of giving our townspeople a good town to live in with good stuff.
Yeah, we do all that, and staying out of the news too, which is
As much as possible.
Well,
No drama.
the tabloid headlines have
Except-
Lincolnville, yes,
Except let's hope that the media isn't like, two selectmen
Well, there
swearing
is
up a storm. Sorry. Yeah, I was a professional sailor for a long time. Does that give me a pass?
yeah.
It was part of my occupational